Hi, my name is Robert de Grouchy, and I am going to train you today in Lesson 2, Making Decisions from Financial Fitness for Life. It's one of the texts from the Council for Economic Education. I'm a middle school CTE teacher with the Clover Park School District, and if you need to get in contact with me, you can see my email address right here. A little bit about me: I was born in the Philippines, grew up in Tacoma, Washington. For 1 year, I worked for a .com up in Seattle. I'm going into my 16th year in the Clover Park School District. As I said previously, I'm a middle school CTE teacher. For the past 2 years, I've been a FEPPP fellow, and for this past year, I began to serve on the FEPPP Executive Committee. FEPPP means Financial Education Public-Private Partnership. So a little bit about how I use Financial Fitness for Life in my classroom. Now, the book is available for everything from kindergarten through high school. I use it in middle school CTE. So Clover Park School District is a low-income school district. 71.8% in students are low income. Careers and life skills are embedded in my framework, so this is a part of what I need to use. And the class names actually can change over time. If you're a CTE teacher, you understand that. There's zip codes that you use, but I used this in my DigiTools and Design Tech classes last year. This year, my courses are called STEM Tech, so it changes a little bit, but the use of career and life skills and financial education are all baked into our CTE curriculum. One thing to remember is that opportunities for all of our students, regardless of their economic background, do absolutely exist, and making sure that we provide that financial literacy to them while they're in school is really important. And we've done, I think, a really good job in my district in working to integrate it. It's always a work in process, but this has been one of the texts and one of the curriculums that's a good part to use here in class, and we're able to weave it into our curriculum. Now, I will say that we don't work on this all the time. It's spread out over the semester. The course is not a financial literacy class per se, but it is one of the units that's taught as part of this. So there is a unit in particular where this is really focused on. So a little bit about this. Financial education has learning standards. If you haven't had a chance to check those out, I'm going to share those with you a little bit here. So on the FEPPP website, sorry, I gotta sneak around my big old microphone that I have. If you go to the website here, you can hop on and you will find those standards located down here. It's listed by grade bands. You can also look at the standards all collected, and that was last updated in 2016. And in particular, we're going to be looking at the competencies here. And the competencies we're going to focus on are competency 1, 2, and 6 in this particular lesson. So spending and saving, students learning to apply strategies to monitor income and expenses, plan for spending, and save for future goals. Competency 2, credit and debt. Students will develop strategies to control and manage credit and debt. And competency 6, financial decision making. Students will apply reliable information and systematic decision making to personal financial decisions. And let's make me a little bit smaller so we can see all of that. There we go. All right, so everything that I'm getting here is from Financial Fitness for Life. So these are a couple of the pieces that are located within the curriculum. This is the teacher guide. This is the student section. And a little bit later on, I'm going to show you how I've updated and modified this for use in my classroom. So some of the pieces that we're going to give you here, I don't necessarily do every single part of the book, every single lesson. So there's some pieces here that you're going to see woven into how I actually teach this class. But most of the information you can actually find in the teacher materials. So the vocabulary that we're learning at is, and remember, I'm teaching middle school, so you can scale this to the grade level that you're at. The classes that I'm teaching have 7th and 8th grade students, You could also modify this absolutely for work with your high school students as well. So alternatives are different options to be considered when making a decision, doing cost-benefit analysis, comparing the advantages and disadvantages in order to make a decision, criteria, what are the things that we use to make a decision, and then this is the big one, and this is a key term that I really want my students to know, is the idea of opportunity costs. And that can be a tricky one if you don't teach that, but it's what's the next best alternative when I make a choice. So, for example, if I'm at McDonald's and I get a fillet of fish, what's the opportunity cost of getting that fillet of fish? Well, I could have had a Big Mac instead. I could have had a McDouble, right? Those are all really bad options for me, my wife would tell you. Or I could have just not gone at all. I could have made something at home. And what's the outcome of that? A trade-off is giving up a little of one thing in order to get a little more of something else. Now, in the curriculum, you're going to find the PACed decision-making process. What's the problem? What are the alternatives? What are the criteria that you have? Make an evaluation and make a decision. The nice thing about this is oftentimes one of the kind of embedded skills that we're teaching there is how to actually go through the decision-making process. When you're faced with a hard decision as you get older, which X, Y, or Z am I going to buy? Where am I going to invest my money? Which phone am I going to buy from a retailer? Having a process to do that is one thing that we can teach students. So you know what the issue is, what are different choices, what's the criteria I'm basing it on, evaluate the criteria, and then make a decision. Okay. So one of the hardest things I think to teach my students is that making decisions should be the last step in the process, okay? You shouldn't go in knowing what it is that you want to buy. And I try to use some real world examples with my kids when I'm making a decision about something. Is if I go in and I say, this is the thing that I want to purchase, or this is the activity that I'm going to do, whatever it is, whatever choice I'm going to make in whatever process, when finance is involved, is remember that making a decision should be the last step in the process. Now you can go in with some preferences, right? And we're going to be talking about that through criteria, but that can be a really big thing for kids, is understanding that the decision is the last thing I'm going to do in that process. So thinking about that, using criteria to make a decision. The built-in lesson I don't use, okay, especially right now in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. So there's a built-in lesson about graham crackers, and I'm going to show this to you. So as we go in here, it gives you all the different information that we're used to in a teacher guide, and obviously you have to make some changes to it. It talks about some things you can introduce to your kids, and this is all located in the Making Decisions workbook for your students, which you could print these off or give them to your students as PDF files. You'll see it includes the PACed decision-making process, the vocabulary. And this is the one right here, which graham cracker is best. Now, I don't know about you, but my kids don't eat a lot of graham crackers. They're delicious, don't get me wrong. I love a s'more, but I try to find something that's makes a little bit more sense to my students. This criteria making process you can absolutely use, and I have colleagues that use this one as well, but I decided to switch mine up a little bit. And what I ended up doing in my classroom, the lesson that I use, is which pair of shoes should Mr. de Grouchy buy? So that was what we went with. And like I told you, I modify this a little bit, and you can do it in a variety of different ways to edit it, but it's the exact same as the graham cracker one, but it's a little bit different here. So evaluate your alternatives and then know your different options. So we just have 3 options here, don't make it too difficult. And then what are some of the criteria? So in this case, we're looking at, okay, so you can see here, there are, when I'm doing this for myself, and remember, this is a PDF that I made myself, I have to come up with what some criteria are. In my case, I'm selecting cost, brand, color, and then use. What am I going to wear the shoes? How am I going to wear the shoes? So for example, when I'm picking out a pair of shoes, what's the price of it? What's the brand that I'm wearing? Because that might be a criteria. what's the color of the shoes, and then how am I going to use the shoes. So for example, there are shoes that are cross trainers, they're court shoes, and if you know what I mean, if you wear basketball shoes, they're not necessarily the most comfortable thing to wear around town. So what am I actually going to use those shoes for? So thinking about that. Now I look at my alternatives here, and I would use some criteria and talk about this with kids. So there's 3 different options here, and I would talk about those kids. There's a pair of Adidas here, a pair of some more updated looking Jordans, and a pair of kind of Series 1 Jordans. So I would then go over this with my students. We would look at the criteria. And then based on that, decide out of these 3, which gets a 3, a 2, or a 1, okay? A 3, or 2, or a 1. And this is something that you can do quickly in your classroom. They can work in groups, they can argue about it, they can say, nah, I want these shoes, or I want those, or this is what I need to think about, or I had a pair of those Jordans and they were garbage, or I had a pair of those Adidas and they fell apart. So it's a way to get kids involved. Now try to find something that works with your students. For me personally, so I'm a computer science teacher, it's a little bit of my background, I still play video games, and I talk with my kids a lot about playing like NBA 2K1, or 2K, well, it's 2K1 now, but so we've had these conversations. Like I have those relationships with my kids already, so it's the kind of thing that kind of builds into that. But you might, make this your own. If you want to do the graham crackers, great. This is how I alternated it to make it work for me. So you can just change that up a little bit. And then from that, they're going to make some decisions. Now, important things to think about when we're working on this is, in this case, we're making all or nothing choices. I can't say I'm going to pick this option and then go with something different, although real life might be different. But in this case, we're thinking about all or nothing choices. And then also, too, when they make a selection, what's the opportunity cost? What is the next best alternative in that case? Okay, and what are the repercussions of that? So, for example, if I choose... Oops. If I choose one pair of shoes, it's going to mean something. If I select this one, it's going to mean that I'm only spending $60, right? And because of that, I have another about $50 left over. If I select this shoe, okay, it means that I'm going to be spending a little bit more money. When I make decisions compared to the next best alternative, and I'm able to rank them, okay, I can make some choices based on that. So it helps to think about, what is the impact of the cost on it? Do you have the ability to make that choice financially, or does it put you in a position where you can't pay other bills? All right. So there are different choices that we can make there. You could start off by saying you have X number of dollars available to make this purchase or make this decision. And that's where, like I say, in my case with my CT 7th and 8th graders, I might make it a little bit more complicated. But for all of these lessons, you want to scale it and scaffold it to you. Everything that you need for these lessons is located in the lesson itself. So for example, if I go down here, oops. We're going to talk about completing the grid. This is the one that you received there. Okay. And then make some choices, make your choices based on that. And it's a really simple way to have the children use criteria and then make decisions based on that. And like I said, here's the one that I use. And we're going to get ready for the next one.